Good writing is good writing. In many ways, it's the audience and their expectations that define a genre. A reader of literary fiction expects the writing to illuminate the human condition, some aspect of our world and our role in it. A reader of genre fiction likes that too, as long as it doesn't get in the way of the story. Rosemary Clement Moore.
You're listening to Writing Roots, brought to you by Aspen House Publishing.
Welcome to Writing Roots. I'm Lee Hull.
And I'm Lee Esses.
Today's question is one that a lot of new authors really consider. We see it a lot in forums, we see it a lot in the questions that we receive, and it is about what to do as an author. If I want to be a career author, should I stick to one genre?
This is one that I actually spent quite a bit of time figuring out how to verbalize and answer. Because genre is such a personal thing to your writing style, the conclusion that I came to was it depends on where you are in your writing journey. If you're just starting out, write as many genres as possible. Experiment, find out what you like, and find your voice as an author. Write as much as you can in every style possible.
That's really how any writing journey starts out. You write as much as you can. For me, that was a lot of one genre. I wrote a lot of fantasy. Even my fan fiction was fantasy. And then I wrote some urban fantasy that will never see the light of day.
Oh, we didn't bring it up in our blackmail episode.
Oh, no, we did.
Oh, good.
We did. And then I started getting into more classical medieval style swords and sorcery. And I've branched out a little bit from there. I started writing murder mystery. And I went back to fantasy because, well, fantasy is my love.
I honestly think that's why you have trouble publishing it.
Absolutely, because I hold myself to too high of a standard with my fantasy.
Yes, you do. You should be writing selfishly.
I try. Anyway.
It's hard.
But through this process, through exploring the different kinds of writing, the different options, this is when you start to figure out who your target audience is and who you want to write for.
And like our opener said, that audience starts to define the genre. The type of thing that people enjoy reading comes down to this type of thing. I enjoy writing action adventure, but I also really enjoy magic. The writing style that I have landed in, at least for the moment, is urban fantasy, because you can write it as a spy thriller action with fireballs. After you've found your voice as an author and you figured out who your target audience is, I would say narrow it down. Start to focus on one particular genre and understanding the types of stories that those readers like to read. Sometimes this narrows down to just a single series, and sometimes this is just a style.
A lot of the authors that you will think about fall into this category. Lee Child, J.K. Rowling, Tom Clancy, Stephanie Garber, a lot of your modern YA, they all focus on a very particular style of writing. They focus on action adventure, on wartime thriller, on middle grade fantasy, on romantasy. All of these authors found their audience. They built a strong following and made a lot of money from it.
There was certainly a time when I was reading a lot of Reacher, where if Reacher existed on the shelf and I hadn't read it, I will 100% purchase it. The name Lee Child has become synonymous with Jack Reacher because he has made his name and his career on this single genre and giving audiences what they enjoy reading in new and interesting ways every single time.
And of course, you can have spin-offs, you can have other books, you can have a variety of options. It doesn't have to be in the same series, but it helps when they're in the same genre because then they can all be marketed in association with that main series that you're known for, that you have established as your basis. Especially when you only have that one series that you're known for, branching out to different genres can be a little bit difficult. because your target audience won't always translate from one to the other.
If I told you the same guy who composed Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Nightmare Before Christmas also did 50 Shades of Grey, you would be very confused. But yes, Danny Elfman did 50 Shades of Grey. You would be very confused because he has a particular style. He has a vibe that we enjoy and we especially associate with Tim Burton, who has a very signature style. Going outside of the genre can do weird things to your brand. So especially as you're building that target audience and there are people in that world who are learning your name for the first time, sticking to a particular single genre can be incredibly helpful in maintaining that career author goal that you talked about in the question.
And eventually you'll get to a point where you can start branching out again. And of course, I'll bring this back to Brandon Sanderson.
As she's rolling up her Christmas sweater sleeves that are Brandon Sanderson Christmas sweater.
My Mistborn ugly sweater. It is beautiful and amazing. With Sanderson, he started out with, I'm going to focus on his adult fiction because his YA and middle grade is just a little bit different. But his adult fiction, he started out very fantasy heavy. All of it was fantasy. And then we got to Mistborn Era 2, and he introduced a little bit more of like an urban sci-fi element through those books. And then you have a lot more of a sci-fi setting, like in Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, where they have noodle shops and clothing stores, and it's a very modern feel to it with some futuristic elements, but still with some magic to it. So he's been able, because of the fan base that he's created, and he's gotten people to love his writing for his writing and not necessarily for the genre, he's been able to branch out and try new things.
So the quick answer to the question, do I write in a single genre or do I diversify, depends on where you are in your writing journey. I will say that this is changing quite a bit. A lot of career authors at the end of the 20th century were individual books. They might have a series where a couple of them interact with each other, but having standalones was much more popular back then as compared to now. Series are a lot of where things are marketed, and a lot of the new authors that you've only heard about in the last 5 years, it's because they're writing great series and you want to jump on board with the series.
Yeah, so back in the 90s, you had Stephen King, Tom Clancy, and while there were usually Easter eggs in their books to their other books, each one stood on its own. Even Jack Ryan, each of those books stood on its own. But you have authors now like Brandon Sanderson, who has this huge interconnected world that is bringing in multiple genres and multiple viewpoints, and people are reading for the sake of the story.
And I will say a lot of this is because the marketing machines have become a lot more robust since self-publishing became a thing. Because the traditional publishers had to use their influence and power and their money to compete with these self-published authors. The way they do that is marketing. Marketing a series is a heck of a lot easier than marketing another standalone by this author that you may or may not have heard of. If they say it's a Jack Reacher novel, you don't even have to put a number on there because that's just not how the series functions. That does all of the marketing for the entire series, not just the one book. On the other hand, Aeronauts Windless is Jim Butcher's steampunk fantasy type series that he's doing now. He did the Dresden Files, everyone loved it, but you have to put on this new genre. The guy who brought you this other thing that you like is now doing something completely different, and that becomes much more difficult to market.
In the end, deciding your genre, deciding how you're going to write is about understanding your target audience. If you're writing mysteries, having the same main character for a series makes sense. But if you're writing sci-fi, it's okay and a lot easier to spread out who that main character is. It makes more sense to change your main character through a series.
So understand what your audience is reading, hopefully by reading a lot of that yourself, and you'll be able to tap into the expectations of the audience, and then you're able to know if they're the right audience for you. We don't necessarily want you to adapt your writing style because this audience over there says so. This conversation is about what you're publishing more than what you're writing. But since the question was career author, sticking to a single genre can be incredibly helpful, especially for making money. Diversifying the genres can be a lot more satisfying as a storyteller.
And if you've been able to build up a target audience, if you've been able to build trust with your audience, that they trust your writing style, they're going to be more willing to follow you to other genres, to things that they might not normally read, because you've established yourself as a good storyteller, which can only happen if you
write selfishly.
If you have a question or comment for our hosts or a topic you'd like us to cover, send us an email at writingroots@aspenhousepublishing.com or find us on Facebook by searching for Aspen House Publishing.